afterwards?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it.
Hi everyone. My name is Katia. I am the general manager of Brandquad. It's an advanced analytics e-commerce solution that helps brands and retailers to improve their e-commerce performance. And I'm very, very happy to co-host this session with Lebbos, who is a serial entrepreneur, a co-founder of Namshi.com that everyone knows, of course, and also the managing partner of AstroLabs. So Luis, maybe you can talk more about your activity.
Sure, yeah. I think everyone knows Namshi, and that's a relevant experience. But also with AstroLabs, which some people might know, I see a lot of people from Dubai. We have both products for startups and global expansions, co-working spaces, etc., that we're happy to have a Brandquad be part of. And actually, I see some of our other members also logging in here. We do training programs for the general public. Relevant to this is we actually have a e-commerce launcher and e-commerce scaler classes. People can see all this information on astrolabs.com. I don't want to be selling too much, but just for context, regarding e-commerce, few things we do. We've actually worked with some retail groups on what we call the Fast Pilot program, helping them find global startups out there that are implementing technologies that would benefit their practices, and formalizing that into a program. And that's actually how we got to meet the Brandquad team a couple of years ago, maybe even almost 3 years ago now, when we were running this program for Shalhoub Group. The second thing we do is we have worked with offline retailers launching e-commerce ventures. So I know, Katia, you mentioned that some people in the audience might be retailers launching, and obviously worked with a lot of startup entrepreneurs on launching their e-commerce startups in different ways, advising, supporting, mentoring, etc. Some of those ventures are actually still up now and are quite successful, and some of them don't exist anymore. And this is where I actually will get the kind of background for giving kind of the do's and don'ts, right? If you don't see failure, you don't have a lot of material for the don'ts. But unfortunately, in the startup world and basically in the venture world, even don't have to be a small startup. Whenever any organization is starting venture, there is a high enough risk of failure, and we learn from it, and that's what we're hoping to kind of give away during this presentation today.
Yep, fantastic. Well, first of all, thanks, Luis, for all your support for Brandquad. It's for sure is our pleasure to be part of AstroLabs community. I suggest that we learn now with a poll who is our audience. So we have 79 people already online. So I will ask you to answer. Actually, I am logged in another account. So unfortunately, I won't be able to ask for a poll now. And let me check, maybe I will be able to do it somehow later on, because it's some technical thing from my side.
Should we do the raise hand one instead? There's the reactions in the Zoom. And we can have people raise their hands. What were the poll questions going to be?
So basically, let's see how many people are from retailer side, how many people are from brand side, and the e-commerce platform. So Luis,
cool. So let's start with retailers, I guess. Who's in the who would consider themselves working in a retailer right now? Use the Zoom reactions and keep those hands up. We'll just do cumulative. I'm not sure actually how it's done on the. Thanks, Vaibhav, for doing it on video. I'm not sure how on the phone actually you do the reactions. I'm still learning Zoom. This has been 6 weeks, and we're still learning this. But on the desktop, you can click reactions, and there's a raised hand option, or I guess raise thumb and clap. Thanks. Cool. We have some scroll. Multiple pages. Interesting. And then who consider themselves part of a brand?
Can I tell you how to raise hands on the phone?
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay, on your phone screen, if you click on the screen, there is an issue on the right side which says more. When you click on the more, it tells you raise hand, virtual background, minimize meeting. So you can click on the raise hand. I think you can see my hand there.
Thanks. Yeah, so we had some people have their hands raised for the brand. Not as efficient as the polling, but it's fine. We'll manage. It was just to get the sense of who's doing what in this audience. We have like a decent number of each. And was there another category, Katia, do you want to ask about?
Yes, this is Salam Sawaya. I just unmuted myself. There is me and two of my colleagues that we've joined your conference from Shweri Group. We're the media arm and we represent TV, digital and outdoor. We're coming through a new company which is established under Shweri Group, which is Brandquad. I think not much of you have heard about it. We're the arm on Shweri Group that we do TV attribution for all e-commerce platforms. So we have many growing clients and startups that were kicked off on TV for awareness and for performance. So today clients are able to speak the digital language through TV campaigns.
Thanks for that, but unfortunately we don't have time. If we did introductions for all people on the call, we will spend the whole hour. Katia, do you want to start the presentation?
Yep, sure. I was trying to resolve my technical issue. I think it's way beyond my capacity. So let's start our session. And thank you very much all for joining. So I will share my screen. And as Luis said, we have a presentation, but this is a basis for the conversation. So whenever you have a question, please send it to us on the chat and we will try to answer it. So first of all, please let me know if you see my screen.
Yep.
Perfect. So we are talking about e-commerce, and all of us know that actually the sales on e-commerce are a function of the sales in general. And COVID-19, unfortunately, has impacted drastically the purchasing power of our population in the Middle East. But what I want to start with is not with negative, but with a positive point. So McKinsey prepared the consumer sentiment research, and it's actually updating bi-weekly. And actually, the numbers that we have received from the consumers in the region are pretty positive. So 61%, and you can see this in this chart, say actually that the economy will rebound within 2 or 3 months and grow just as strong or stronger than before COVID-19. And actually the same number, if we go, for instance, to the UK, it's as low as 15%. And in the US, it is only 39%. So basically, what I want to tell you is that somehow we are pretty good here in the Middle East, and the consumer sentiment is still remaining positive. However, well, we'll still need to remain on the ground, and 72% of the UAE consumers said that they will cut back on the spending. And this is actually relevant across all industries and across all sectors. So of course we see that groceries, for instance, are the net intent is positive, but footwear, apparel, jewelry, accessories, we're all in the negative territory. And of course, the most hit is everything which is travel, outdoor entertainment, or fitness and wellness. However, what is good for e-commerce, that we see that the consumer trend is going online independently of the sector. And this chart shows here the increase in online sales with the decrease in offline sales. And what is interesting here, of course, we can see some, very easy and natural results, like for groceries being on top of e-commerce and online sales. and also household supplies. But what is interesting for us is that, of course, everything is down, but still jewelry, accessories, apparel, and skincare are doing sales, and they are more and more going online. So the question is whether it's an opportunity or a challenge. And actually today we will try to answer this question. Unfortunately, MENA retail is not prepared for online. And I believe that the majority of people who are joining us today have the similar sentiment. And there are two things that I would like to mention is that from the brand's perspective, for instance, Huda Beauty co-founder Mona Kachan mentioned this, that actually this is due to the shopping habits that people actually in big part prefer to shop offline. But however, she's being more positive and saying that there will be the shift in consumer behavior towards online channels. And from the retailer's perspective, actually, Unas, for instance, was one of the early adopters of online in luxury. And what Amit Rawal says, the ex-head of Unas, that actually this helped them to build on the competitive advantage. So basically, whatever sales are happening on luxury, they are happening now online. And they are getting the bigger market share just because they were early adopters. The other question is what to do, right? If we were not online, how to adjust it? And these numbers that I want to share with you as well also show that actually online business models are very important nowadays. So Alshaya Group, together with Shaloub Group, they registered the drastic decrease in online in sales, and it's only online channels that are working now. So for Alshaya, the decrease was by 95%, and for Shaloub Group, it was 90%. But what is interesting is that if all stores are locked down, so these sales are happening online. And if we look at the numbers before COVID, the sales online represented only 1 or 2% of sales for these groups. So now we are going into the growth from 1% to almost 10%. And how difficult is it to manage? And we will try to actually give some insights, how to manage this growth. The other point that I wanted to say that pure players of regional pure players like the Luxury Closet or InstaShop are actually booming. For the Luxury Closet, there is an increase of 150% of new customers since the outbreak of the crisis. And for InstaShop, there is a 53% increase in orders with a basket size going up 71%. And one thing which is relevant or common to both these players is local supply chain. Both the Luxury Closet and InstaShop work with the local suppliers. So here we see when the globalization and the global supply chains are being disrupted, it's the local players that are actually performing better than anyone else. So today we will try with Luis to give you 3 major points on actually how to manage e-commerce. First of all, we will start with the how to launch e-commerce and the key success factors, these do's and don'ts that Luis has mentioned in the very beginning. Then we will talk about how to scale. Basically, when you have a very big business, but you are not online, what should you do to improve this situation? And the third one, it will be more like an overture, actually how to innovate. And we will look at some very specific innovation tools, like for instance, augmented reality or virtual reality, or some channels like direct to consumer. So Luis, I think the floor is yours. So how to start e-commerce and what are the key success factors? Please, can you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Katia. That was an interesting kind of like frame and context for what's happening in the region right now. Katia asked me to kind of focus on how to start an e-commerce venture and at the same time try to make it applicable to our varied audience, which is a combination of brands, retailers, entrepreneurs, and maybe also some other categories that we don't know about from the audience right now. So I'm going to try to make it as applicable to all, but as you know, when it's applicable to all, it's not super specific to one. Here are points that I think anyone starting an e-commerce venture, may be from scratch, or if you're an offline retailer or brand, need to kind of keep in mind. One, many of these sound obvious, but honestly, it just, after working with many organizations that have not thought about it in the structured way, you have to mention the obvious, yeah? So first is the customer value proposition, right? A lot of times we see organizations that say, okay, we're gonna take what we have offline, or we are interested in launching this kind of product line online. And this is what we would like to do, right? And our question is always, does the online consumer, is it the same exact consumer that consumes your offline product? How do the segments differ? How do geographies differ, etc.? And what is the appetite for these kind of products for the online consumer, right? So it's always about thinking about what is the customer value proposition first. What does the product, would the product work online? And obviously kind of like the pricing and competitiveness, right? So offline, when you're going to your local retail store, that might be super convenient, and that's the easiest thing for you to do. But once you move online, price transparency becomes evident. So your competition becomes global. When people are searching for a specific type of item, maybe a shoe or a book or a phone, then like competition is global, right? Because we mostly work in the GCC. Shipping might be same day, might be next day, but global competitors are shipping in a couple of days, right? So that's also something to think about. And so pricing, what the value proposition is, something top of mind. Two is the organization, right? If it's a new venture, you have to understand what you're getting into. But I think more complex is if you're an offline retailer, how do you start an online business that is able to create its own long-term success without basically being crushed? At one point, I remember meeting a head of e-commerce for one of the big, let's call them tech retailers, distributors in the region. And after meeting with them, honestly, I didn't think they can put, they cannot buy, kitchen towels on the company credit cards, right? So they were not empowered to make any decisions, right? It felt like a very junior person tasked with this massive, mission of bringing that retailer online. So what happens in that case is usually they are deprioritized. Even if they're good, they are not able to push through the painful changes that need to happen for the e-commerce venture to launch and scale, right? There might be some prioritization that needs to happen in the warehouses. There might be some shift in marketing spend, all of this stuff. And if someone is not able to push through those changes at a peer-to-peer level, or even from a CEO chairman level, some of this stuff might not happen. And this is why, honestly, we see a lot of the offline retailers dragged their feet for many years in this, because they had people working on e-commerce, but didn't have the people that would be able to push it. Okay, moving on. The business model. It is maybe slightly easier if you're an offline retailer moving to online. You understand your economics and all of the stuff. But more complex if you're starting a brand new venture. You need to understand, how does the e-commerce business model work? How do the unit economics work? The landlords don't become the huge malls. The landlords become, in many cases, Google and Facebook, right? You need to, in many cases, pay rent for Google and Facebook to have your e-commerce store, right? Then we move to the question that usually comes up, most frequently. When we get approached by a offline e-commerce group, the first question is usually, should I use X platform or Y platform as my CMS, ERP. They think about tech first, as if like the e-commerce store is just that. All of those questions should come before, but the tech platform is important, right? I think you guys have some products that integrate into the CMS and ERP, but without talking about Brandquad, it's not necessary to complicate it. As soon as a huge e-commerce venture wants to do a e-commerce store for maybe one of their brands, a huge retailer venture, then descending on them is tons of salespeople for these very complicated CMSs, ERP integration, this does that, bells and whistles, and all the stuff. It's so complicated that actually it transforms that investment into like hassle and high operational expenses. And honestly, like it really like handcuffs the venture from the start. And my personal recommendation is usually starting something simple. Obviously, you don't want to like build stuff from scratch. So usually you have to use some existing component of platforms that work. But you don't have to get the most complicated one that takes 20 million simultaneous sessions and this type of stuff. Keep it simple. Have maybe a 2-year plan for scaling, but it doesn't have to scale for the next 10 years, right? The other thing that I think is critically important is, okay, what is the customer acquisition model, right? Many, again, offline retailers, maybe new entrepreneurs are very optimistic that I'll put the website up and, or the app, I'll put the app on the App Store and the Play Store. And suddenly I'll have this like stampede of sales and, need to be ready for power up those servers. No one will know about it, right? And even if you plaster it all over buildings and stuff like that, people have to be convinced that they need to go to you to buy this product, right? So that is where like a customer acquisition strategy is very important. What is the mix of channels you're going to use? And as we said, you can start heavily on the Googles and Facebooks and definitely great platforms. But if you're only dependent on like paid media, your future economics don't look so good in the long term, right? So you have to, increase your share in earned media and referrals and all of this stuff. So that's very important. One that is not technical but important to keep in mind is patience. It doesn't take 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months to start a venture. It takes longer, especially if there's competing priorities with the organization. Now there's COVID, but other times there's other kind of crises. And if this is like a venture that you're investing money in and it's losing money, and look, it's like making less than one of my stores and one of my malls, you tend to like disregard it and deprioritize it, right? And everything starts small. At some point in my other programs, I've shown a screenshot of a whiteboard I drew by hand in like our first weeks. In the first weeks, and I'm showing like 1 order, 0, 0, 2 orders, 0, 4 orders, like a big day, to signify to people that like everything starts super small and it's not like magic that it grows, right? So people have too high of expectations, and patience is like super important. Continuous iteration is critical. So that brings me to my point number 7, which is metrics, the right KPIs, and iteration on those, learning from those and iterating on them, right? Why, there should be like enough useful dashboards that are actionable, that you can learn what you're doing wrong, or what you should be doing that you're not doing right now, right? So that's basically kind of like high level thinking. This is not class on starting an e-commerce site, but this is high level, I think, 7 points that people should like really keep in mind. And if you put these 7 points and you break them down, you kind of basically have a playbook to doing this. So maybe I'll stop here. I see some chats. Siddharth is asking, do we need to follow different strategies and models for each specific country in MENA? yes and yes. Listen, the countries so I'm quite experienced in the GCC with some experience in the rest of MENA, right? So I can tell you for sure, Saudi is different than UAE, right? If you've worked in the region, there's many different things. Even honestly, like it's surprising to me that like 7-8 years later, even like the payment options and all the stuff are different in some of these countries. But without going into detail, Saudi is different than UAE. Super important for like, Arabic side, and your marketing strategy will be different in Saudi than UAE. Then Levant and North Africa are totally different monsters. Egypt is like insanely different. And this will be very different, like on the different product categories, right? So maybe if you're like selling Pepsi, they'd be more similar. But if you're selling other products, there'd be more difference, right? The consumer power in the GCC is different than consumer power in Levant and North Africa. So you have to adjust it to what, your product offering is, your pricing is. And there's a lot more complications, honestly, on logistics and payments and all the stuff that, complicates stuff.
We have another question, which is super interesting, about the payment gateways. So what do you think of websites like Shopify to minimize development of website and app costs and still better? Oh, no, sorry.
No, this is a separate question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you're starting from scratch, highly recommend using as off-the-shelf of a website as possible. It has to be functioning enough for you to be able to serve the customer, for them to have a decent experience. But right now, a huge amount of world commerce is happening on Shopify, right? So it is, at the same time, I think it's going to be a huge disruptor. At the same time, it's a company that serves the smallest of the smallest, but is able to power you all the way to like huge. I think there's companies doing like more than $1 billion per year. What's the Kardashian? I think I don't know. I don't know them, by the way, by different names. One of the Kardashians has like that cosmetic brand. Her thing is running on Shopify. There's a bunch of other $1 billion companies running on Shopify. I personally don't recommend a specific one because that's not my business. But you should look at kind of like especially if you're starting small and bootstrapped, you should look at the off-the-shelf stuff. If you get into custom design, oof, man, this is like the field of pain, suffering, eating glass, and many issues because you have the outsourced developers that will develop something for you. You won't be happy with it. Saw many horror stories on that. That was the question on kind of like platform. There's a question on payments. Yeah. Listen, payments, I haven't cracked it myself. It depends. Cost prohibitive is also relative. If you're like operating at low margins, 10% or less, yes, a 3-point-something% that a credit card a processor takes from you is a big one. Honestly, I'm not sure, I'm not current at what PayPal is charging and all this stuff, so I'm not going to go into those details. But like, payment processors are taking, call it between 3 and 5%. 3 if you're big and lucky, maybe 2.9, and then 5 if you're small. Some of them are actually even having kind of to kick people out of their platforms because the cost of servicing very small ones is prohibitive. This is where people are starting to kind of migrate to Stripes and other kind of platforms. Yeah, payment, honestly, unsolved. It's a huge opportunity. There are many players. I know there's tons of startups in this field. I don't feel like anyone has cracked it. Stripe is doing stuff in this. I'm not sure how well integrated it is into like the banks in UAE and all that stuff. To be honest with you, I'm a little bit rusty on the payment part. What are the key KPIs e-commerce companies should measure on a daily basis? Wow. Listen, it depends. So if you're like high volume and you have like decent traffic coming, you should definitely be measuring a few things, right? So there's stuff on how much you're paying in marketing to acquire the sales that you're acquiring, right? May it be how much is the cost per order, cost per acquisition. You should be measuring, I think one is online, your conversion rate every day. Optimizing how good of a job your website is doing with this marketing spend is critically important. Otherwise, you're wasting your money. Other things, I usually like to see kind of like obviously number of orders, average order size, because I'll give you like a random example. But I was talking to a friend who runs one of the largest, it's called them food delivery companies, and he was like, "Yeah, amazing revenue, but our margins are terrible because now people are ordering like a cup of coffee online, right? That's probably negative margin for them. They lose probably money every time you guys order a cup of coffee online, an iced latte or cappuccino." So you have to measure kind of like what is your average order size and how a distribution is to see, okay, what's happening with your economics. And this basically takes us to the question on unit economics. How does like profitability work? So the dashboard itself is quite big, but if you're launching, I wouldn't complicate it too much. Start with how much you're spending on marketing, how much revenue you're creating, and how the website is converting if you're just launching. And then from there, you can like go into like depths, and honestly, you end up with like pretty significant dashboard. The important thing is, are these metrics actionable, and are you looking at them often enough to be able to do the change, and in a way that is segmented enough to know, okay, so I'm spending a lot of money on marketing. If that's all I know, I cannot action it. I need to know, okay, how are Facebook doing versus Google? How's this campaign doing versus that campaign? So you have to go in much deeper depths usually to be able to fix stuff. And we can probably go for like 2 hours on just like the questions. So I'm not sure, Katia, your call. How much should I answer? How much should we?
Well, first of all, I do agree with you that actually measurable digital KPIs are very important, and it's not only for startups but also to big retailers. It's very important to measure and to actually understand what are the actions to be taken to improve these KPIs. And with this, I actually want to go to the second part, which is more related to brands and retailers rather than the startups. So I will share with the screen with you, and then I will actually stop after every part so that we can take the questions. So let's. This is the easiest thing available on Zoom. So basically, I would like to first explain how to scale and give you the exact use cases, how to optimize the supply chain, how to enhance regional online experience, for instance, for brands from global who have a local presence from global brands like L'Oreal or Shiseido or any big multinational. And then the third thing that I would like to put your attention on is about data-driven assortment. So let's move to the first point. Of course, COVID-19 has put under pressure all the supply chains. And I would like to give one use case. So basically it's e-grocery market that actually was put under test, and whether they can meet the local demand. And there are 3 main points that companies need to concentrate on. So first of all, it's of course the out of stock. So with the supply chains being disrupted, how would you ensure the product on shelf availability? And it could be relevant as for the Carrefours, so for the bulk quizzes, the startups, the pure e-commerce players. So what we have seen is that you can first increase the supply, like for instance, Lulu supermarkets did. They basically took the charter rates to the UAE, so that they can actually manage their own supply delivery. Or what you can do less when you are a smaller retailer, you can actually track out of stock and actually talk to the brand so that the replenishment is being managed in a more seamless manner. Then the second point is very important, which is last mile delivery. Of course, nowadays everyone wants their products to be delivered in their homes. Is it possible? If your sales increase twice or they triple, sometimes last mile delivery is one of the bottlenecks. So basically, how to manage this missed delivery time? Some companies actually did the decreased delivery slots. So basically, decrease the number of hours that you are operating and that your consumers can choose online. And the third point, which is also very interesting, especially for the Middle East, is rethinking payment options. You know, cash on delivery was the king in the region for e-commerce. Nowadays, we see the changing consumer habits. So it's relevant both for retailers and brands. You need to basically rethink what would be your payment options. Either it's mobile payment or just the payments straight away from your website. And Luis has already mentioned, you know, for the startups, for the marketplaces, what could be the solution. So the second use case that I want to share with you is not related to COVID, but actually it's a situation of a beauty brand which had troubles actually to monetize the traffic, the local traffic. And this is a global brand. Let's call it a brand that has two websites, bread.com, which is a global website, and brand.ae. And this is the real case. So we tried to analyze actually how to increase the sales in the region. And what we saw that actually the brand was trending in the search results in 2019 and 20, with more than 10,000 search results being generated only from the UAE. But when we went further into analysis, we saw that actually the traffic from GCC was being directed to brand.com, which is a global website and was not actually shoppable online here in the region. And basically the brand was losing $44,000 of sales just because they could not actually retarget this traffic to the right e-commerce channels, which are shoppable online here in the GCC. And I believe that there would be similar cases with our audience here, because we have many brands presented during the webinar. And what I would like to suggest is that to concentrate on three major points. So the first one is, of course, define your brand positioning online. Basically, try to drive the brand.com traffic to the official GCC e-commerce channels. It could be your website, or if it's, of course, shoppable, or it could be your official e-commerce channels for beauty. It could be Sephora.ae or Faces or any other channel. The second very important point for the Middle East is actually feed e-commerce channels with proper content. And me as a consumer, I can also understand why, for instance, from the Middle East, being based in Dubai, I would go and look for the contents, for the descriptions, for the pictures, which are richer in the global websites than in the local ones. So the key success factor is actually how you communicate the value proposition of your products to your online customers in the region. Create this community which is local and help them to actually be informed about your products. And the third point, which is also very important, to keep an eye on every single channel. So if you have 5 or 6 distribution channels, you should control the stock and avoid out of stock or any discontinuity of your products. Because sometimes it's very complicated for brands to see actually what is out of stock, because this information is not being given to the brands on a daily basis, for instance, from the retailers. The second point is to optimize the product pricing, assortment, and search. And we saw it across different clients that actually the problem is that the prices, for instance, are being defined in the headquarters in Paris. But local teams, they are not able to do promotional pricing, for instance, here in the Middle East, which is depending, on the local consumer habits. And the third point that I wanted to highlight is engage with your customers by tracking ratings and reviews. In the GCC region, it's very important to have this community feeling and to make this engagement positive and to answer, all the reviews and being connected with the customers. So now I want to see if we have any questions about how to scale. Does anyone have questions about the scaling or maybe challenges of the supply chain or any comments?
Maybe we could take like a video question this time so people get to hear from someone else.
So we have Siddhartha. So Siddhartha, could you please unmute yourself and please ask your question? Siddhartha?
Or someone else?
Yeah, I think it's...
If you have like a question on scaling, unmute yourself. It could be in regards to the information that Katia put up or anything else. So we don't want to like, force people to...
Indeed. So, Farzal, please.
Yes, just a plug. Luis mentioned that don't go into custom development. So I just want to state an exception to that rule, that if there is an e-commerce specialist vendor which has an existing software and then they can prove that this works and has been deployed before and scales to millions of users, that might be an exception to the rule. So.
No, I agree. I guess, Farzal, my point was more people going to places and asking them to develop something totally from scratch and going into the headaches. But yeah, we've seen your work, especially, the more tested the solution is, the better. But yeah, try to minimize headache, especially for the smallest ones.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It was not very relevant to what I have just said, but I think the most important is to make the conversation happen. So
we can take a question on scaling.
Sure. So what are some vertical opportunities and what are the keys for some boutique brands categories to attract local customers? Actually, I will go to the assortment topic of different products, but maybe Luis, if you want to comment on the keys on boutique brands and categories to attract local customers.
What are some vertical opportunities? So basically, like the question is, what are opportunities for new products to be online in the region? I said it on a previous webinar, and I'll say it again. I feel honestly, there's tons. The ones that come to mind for me, one is like furniture and home items. I find it like pretty weak in the GCC, in the MENA region overall. Logistics plays part of it, obviously, but I feel like there's like a huge opportunity there to build something. Now the retailers are coming online in that space. There's probably other categories, but to be honest with you, nothing is like top of mind. It's like a pop quiz, but there's tons of opportunity. Honestly, like if you go online, I mean, even the ones that are served, like with all due respect to existing players, but even the ones that are served, you go and like the price is like 2 to 3x what it is in Europe and US. So, I have a young baby and half of the year I live in Dubai. And I look at the stuff that is on offer on the online sites in Dubai. And to be honest with you, I end up buying it in the US and shipping it to Dubai because I don't want to pay 3x. It just like feels insulting. So if you can crack how to come in and compete on price with even existing categories, I think I would do that.
Yeah, and actually I attended the webinar of one of your co-founders. from namshi.com. And basically he said that Namshi nailed actually sportswear, and also these schools, when kids are getting prepared to the schools. So basically, if you cannot compete on the price, you can actually compete either on one category of the product, and the second on the customer experience. So basically, customer experience is the key success factor, because when you can deliver in 2 days, where instead of 3 weeks, then can actually your consumers go to your local website rather than go into a UK-based website or a Chinese website that might be less pricey. Mm-hmm. So we have 10 minutes left for our webinar. So maybe let me go quickly through assortment, and then we will go to the third part, which is actually innovation and how to implement innovation. I will share the screen again. And both retailers and brands will see the shift in consumer habits. And I think it's very important to understand, from the brand perspective and also from the retail's perspective, which products will be more relevant in a post-COVID situation. So basically, there are 3 categories of products that actually face this change. First of all, you can be the brand that faces incremental demand. It's like sanitizers, etc., that will actually see their sales increase even after post-COVID. And these companies, these brands, they will need actually to manage their strategies in a certain way. The same is for the categories that grew in the short term, like for instance, toilet paper or some household FMCG products, but actually this short-term increase in demand will plateau after the COVID situation will be stabilized. And these companies also need to understand actually how to manage their communication with the retailers in the future, at least by until the end of 2020. And there is the third part of the categories of the product that faced actually volume declines during the COVID, and it will stabilize afterwards. And I would like to share quickly with you the main points for each product category that the e-commerce managers of both retailers who sell them or brands who are trying to push these products online need to concentrate on. So first of all, the categories that faced incremental demand, manufacturers in these categories will want to look for competitive advantages in 3 main areas. They will want to expand the reach of the products and categories to capture the increased demand, meaning that the brands will want to go quickly online on different e-commerce channels. And this is super important. So the speed of the market, so react quickly to any increase on demand, is crucial to increasing the sales and monetizing basically the COVID situation. The second point is actually increasing the overall space in these categories. So for brands in this situation, it's also crucial to talk to the retailer and to see what is the brand positioning on their website. And the third point, which is very important also, is to react quickly to any out of stock situation. Basically, it's the brand's mission to replenish as quickly as possible the best sellers, because this situation in increased sales might be changing within time. The second category of the product, and I believe that some products, some brand representatives on the call are in this category, is the ones that actually see the increase in the sales, but this situation will actually plateau in the end of 2020 and also will plateau in the future. So what is important for this, and this is mostly for FMCG. What is important for these brands is actually to reset the promotion intensity of their category. Because, being it a toothpaste or some food like pasta or whatever, the game was in promotions. Basically, to acquire some market share, these brands were actually trying to have some promotional campaigns. And this is like a vicious circle because your margins are being actually killed. And the time, now in COVID, these companies might have already achieved their sales targets for the year, and knowing that this situation will actually plateau, it's a best chance to actually reduce the promotional campaigns and to pay more attention on the value proposition of the brand. So basically, it's also repositioning the pricing architecture, meaning not going into the price decreases as often as it was before. Why? Because this will help to increase profits throughout 2020, because your margin is already safe. And the third category of the products are the products like beauty, for instance, or apparel or fashion that saw the volume declines. And of course, this will be very challenging for them, because these manufacturers will need to battle hard as they will go through the market reset. Basically, you will need to build solid arguments to compete, meaning that the value proposition should go beyond the products. It should go to the values that your company or your brand represent. Unfortunately or fortunately, these brands will increase the promo levels. So basically, if before promotions were the game for FMCG, now we will see actually that apparel brands or even accessories or jewelry will have to increase the promotional campaigns. And of course, here we are talking on reset, not on by product, but by the entire categories. So basically, the communication via the retailer will be towards categories and not product-centric one. So basically, the major problems of all these three categories is adjust your assortment to the client's needs, react quickly, and also track the out of stock. And what is very important here is the cooperation between the manufacturers and retailers. If before the communication between these two players was sometimes not constant, today, in order, if you want to increase sales, you have to do that. And you have to actually automatically get the insights from the retailer sides and from the brand sides in order to be able to answer promptly to the changes of the consumer sentiment. And basically, this is the how to scale part. Do we have any questions on that? So I have the comment, critical to implement well for all retail companies. Yes, Saleh? Right?
Hi. I watched all the webinar and actually from the start of the whole story of the COVID-19, me as a business in the real estate industry, so we try to implement some ideas as like visual visiting of the property and providing 3D visual walkthrough and stuff like that. So I was thinking, most of the client in this time, they got more interested in big spaces or the balconies or like views or such stuff like that. So I was thinking with these ideas that you provided for scaling up the business, how I can implement these factors in my business. I hope I could ask my question clear.
Factors, can you please be more precise on the factors?
I mean, you gave some ideas and some solutions to scale up the business, right?
Correct.
So I'm asking how I can implement these in my business.
What's your business exactly? You mentioned real estate. What is it exactly?
Yes, real estate. It's a real estate.
What kind of real estate?
We are here speaking about e-commerce online skills, right? How to scale online sales.
Exactly.
And
exactly. That's I'm trying to be online more. Okay, I'm trying to be online more, which is most of the companies and the developers in the real estate, they felt that they need to be more online.
Yes. So
okay,
so from real estate perspective, how to be more online?
Yeah.
So basically please correct me if you have any other answer. So we see that Mall of the Emirates is going online. We see that actually Dubai Mall is developing, you know, their activity at noon.com. So basically that's one option. You can also, if you have, you know, some brands.
We might have to take this question offline, just because it's super specific to one industry, and most of other, attendees are in different industry. But Katia can share with you privately her contact information. We can take this.
Guys, if I may, actually the principle is quite the same as for the e-com retail. So
sorry, Philip. We have about 80 people here. We can connect you directly to Salah to reply to him. We just want to wrap up this, so you guys can connect directly.
All right.
Sure. Well, Philip is just the CEO of Brandquad, and I believe he's not used to be cut at this chat.
No worries, guys. I mean, it's your webinar, your rules, for sure.
Yep. Let's speak about the offline retail separately. And maybe let's go to the third part quickly, because we are already running out of time. So basically, what are, the ways to innovate, right? And let me share also my screen. So here we can have, I think we should go straight to the point, right? Thing is that in the audience, we have some retailers or brands that are different in their development stage. And some brands here in the GCC region, they don't have the shoppable websites. So basically, what is the solution? Because sometimes, when there is out of stock on the retailer side, the clients, the customers, they go directly to the brand's website. And it's unfortunately not possible to buy these products online. So basically, the simplistic solution to innovate could be a buy button, right? Just putting a button that will actually redirect the traffic to your retailer store. And it will help you to monetize as a brand on the traffic that you generate in the region. The second thing, and I think, Luis, you can also give your opinion on that, is the subscription models, right? The automated subscription models can actually help to, we are speaking about the Internet of Things, about the fridges that are replenished themselves, but actually the subscription model could be the first step. And it helps to actually reward your customers and ease their communication with the brand or with the retailer. And we can see that in the region, there are very good examples of such subscription models. For instance, the company, which is called Glambox, they do delivery of a box of a beauty product, depending on the tastes of each customer. And it is renewed every month. You receive basically the new product in your Glambox. The third thing, and I think this is like the third step of innovation in retail experience, is virtual reality or augmented reality. So basically, let's imagine the situation that our shopping malls are being open and we can still go there. Me, as a consumer, I would be very reluctant to try on any fashion items because I don't know, the virus is still there, right? So basically, maybe that's time to think about augmented reality or a virtual reality that can replicate my physical experience of trying on the items without this danger of catching the virus. So maybe we should think about it. And to sum up on the new technology adoption, basically, it should be gradual. So from the brand's perspective or from the retailer perspective, if tomorrow you want to start integrating some solution, so the most important is first provide some basic functionality online or via mobile, for instance, mobile payments or the product discovery, with the better quality of your product data. Then you can move further to provide some other advancements like auto subscriptions or personalized location alerts to show where your products are available online or offline. And of course, the third one will be adoption of sophisticated tools like AR and VR. And on that, Luis, do you have any comments possibly on the innovation part and the innovation path?
Listen, I think innovation, we have a, we generally use like a simple definition of innovation, which is like stuff that is cool and looks like fun toys. I think honestly, if someone can come and change the business model in a certain way to make it more cost efficient to import stuff into the GCC and sell at half the price, that's crazy good innovation. It doesn't have to be sending rockets to Mars. If you're able to have a subscription service that doesn't bother me with like 1 billion calls to deliver something every single week or every single month, and stuff happens flawlessly, even if whatever you're using is super basic technology, that is innovation. Yes, there's like tools that help create new opportunities. We were talking earlier on a post-COVID world where people might wanna not try physical items on because you never know, contamination, all this stuff. So will there be like a jump into AR and VR because of that? TBD. I'm not sure. I'm not an adopter of those technologies at all right now. They have some room to progress. But my point is like there's like innovation in anything that is hard that someone is able to solve. It doesn't have to be like a new technology that comes from Silicon Valley or whatever, Shenzhen. It could be on a million different dimensions, and that's I think where kind of success comes from. Is you have to like solve a hard problem in a different way. It could be using old tools, could be using new tools, etc. I really enjoyed this, Katia. I have to go. There's life outside. I actually included my email address, which I rarely do, in this chat because I really enjoy the chat. And during COVID, I'm actually doing way more replies to people I don't know on their business, on going to business school, on startups, on all of the stuff. I'm spending more time on this stuff. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to email me. The more relevant, the higher likelihood I will reply. So thanks everyone. Anything else, Katia?
Yep, thank you very much, Luis. It was also a pleasure, although we have some technical challenges that were a bit unexpected. So from my perspective, I should say, yes, start small from the innovation viewpoint, and also start with the problems, not with the technology, but asking, do I need to manage out of stock? Do I need to manage the assortment? These simple questions, and then go from the problems to the solutions. And of course, we as a community, as Brandquad and also AstroLabs, we are happy to be here and happy to help you to define, these KPIs, to quantify them and to move forward with your businesses. So thanks a lot, everyone. And I will share the slides and also some comments, because I believe that would be very helpful also for our guests. So thank you, everyone, and best of luck. And yeah, let's hope for post-COVID and that we will be able to go to our normal lives very, very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Katia, for us. Bye.